Good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are around the world watching this video or catching our podcast. My name is Calvin Coyles, and I am with the amazing Wade Galt. Very excited to have a Yankee with us over in the United States. He stayed up late for today's call, and particularly it's difficult for him to do that because most of his time is spent working working on relaxing rather than working on a business. He's the founder of the 3-Day Weekend. He's an entrepreneur as well as an author as well, and a true pleasure to have him on our call today. And in our little interaction beforehand, you can tell the t-shirt is not photoshopped. This is the way that he really is, and as a man of tremendous passion, I know you're going to learn a lot today as well. Wade, thank you so much for being on our podcast. I'm very excited to chat with you today. How's your day been so far?
Absolutely. Doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Cal. I'm excited to be here. I really like what it seems you're up to. I've looked in a little bit of what you're doing, and actually really interested in learning more. So I'm excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Perhaps we start at the beginning. Obviously, you didn't start out with a 3-day weekend, right? Most people wait until they retire to have that. So talk to me about what the origin of this story was all about, how you came to discover personal development, professional development, business entrepreneurship, outsourcing, you're designing your dream life. Was that something that you always had? Was it something that just sort of appeared to you over one period of time? Give me the backstory here.
Sure. Okay. So the unofficial backstory, which is probably not the best way to word it, was a essay in English literature class in high school where I was asked what I'd like my life to be. And I thought it'd be great if I could marry an attorney and she would do the work and I'd raise the kids and play volleyball at the beach. That shows you my level of knowledge. I would raise the kids while playing volleyball at the beach.
At the beach, yeah.
Yes, but very much have been into lifestyle. My father's an entrepreneur. My parents are from the islands of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, wow.
So there is a very really great perspective they have on life and enjoying life. So that's something that I've kind of always carried with me.
Yeah.
And I left college with a degree, and took me 22 years after graduating college to get to a situation where I could work a 4-day work week and enjoy a 3-day weekend. I had been an employee for a while, tried to get them to allow me to do it, in a great company, but this is 20 years ago. I was like, no, if you do it, everybody's going to want to do it. I started my own business. And as any entrepreneur knows that's been around for more than a year or so, you don't always get to pick your hours, or the old joke, you can work part-time, whatever, 12 hours of the day you'd like.
Yeah.
And so got to see a lot of people being successful by many standards, but I had been blessed by the perspective I was able to witness. A lot of my father's friends that were successful entrepreneurs, and got to see that money was an amplifier. So it's great. I'd rather have money than not. But money didn't make people happy. If people were not so happy, it just kind of amplified that. If people were happy, it amplified that. And again, definitely a fan of having money, but I found out very quickly that money was not the variable. It was not the thing to chase. So it's better to have it than to not have it. Certainly worth working for when done honorably. But so from that standpoint, I always had this understanding that life is somewhat short. Enjoy things while you can, be present with people while you can. And the only thing I know that's a guaranteed return on investment is either time with loved ones, time with friends, or doing stuff I enjoy, or making a difference in the world. That's guaranteed ROI. Everything else, I've made enough bad investments in things at times that have turned out. I mean, I've made some good investments too, but just see where you work so hard for something, you put money into it, it's going to appreciate. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But definitely just quality life and enjoying it is so huge. And so as I started growing my business, just started moving more in that direction. And I actually had at the same time 2 different people challenge me to get to this 4-day work week, 3-day weekend lifestyle. And this was at the same time from 2 different literally hemispheres of the world, which was so interesting. So a friend of mine at the beach that I would run into every Friday when we were playing volleyball, I hadn't played in maybe about 5-6 years, and started playing more and more, and it'd show up. And one day Larry just said, "Wade, you've got to be here every week." And I guess he heard me saying that I might not come back the next week. He said, "You have to be here every week." I said, "Why, Larry?" He says, "Because life is short. I've been doing this over 25 years. You have to make time for life." And at the same time, a coach of mine who I had met through the first podcast interview I ever did, a gentleman in South Africa, Johan, was saying, "Wade, look, if you're going to coach people on this and you're going to encourage people to enjoy this 3-day weekend, 4-day work week type lifestyle, you can't be doing it half of the year and then telling me that when your busy season comes that, oh no, you just can't do it then." This is, you're copying out. You're taking the easy way out. And anybody can do that. Anybody can take a few extra weeks off. Are you willing to take the risks? Are you willing to perhaps lose a couple of your not so greatest customers, or are you willing to step up your game to deliver on the 4 days you're present? So the simple fact that I heard from two people, two completely different parts of the world within a week of each other, it's very clear that, okay, this wasn't just me being lazy. There was something to this. And why I say that is what I got to experience is when I started doing it, I became a better father. I became a better husband. I became less grouchy. I hadn't been taking care of my needs as just simply a person of doing stuff that I've always enjoyed. I've always loved beach volleyball. So when I do that, I'm a lot happier. I come home tired, but I'm happier.
Mhm.
And when I don't do that, usually within a week or two, I'm pretty grumpy, and
Yeah.
I don't intend to be, but that's just kind of what happens.
Yeah, well, this I mean, writing notes, and one of the not so secret truths of why I run this podcast is, I spoke to Jade, who you would have spoke to and connecting in with today, and Jade says, "Well, who do you want to have on the podcast?" I said, "I want to speak to really fucking interesting people. I want to speak to people that I would want to speak to if I got the chance to pick their brains and get a different perspective or a different take on life. I think that's fantastic." And so I've been writing notes, and I hope everyone at home has been as well. I love the concept of money being an amplifier. I truly believe that as well. People that are miserable get more money, they've got more reasons to be miserable about, and they'll find some negative in having money. The opposite could be true as well. And I love the idea as well of, you said something so beautiful. It's just a different take on things, right? When, it's worth working for when done honorably, in terms of creating wealth. And I like the way you put that across. And I want to come back to this question a little bit, which is, you see a lot of people now talking about this idea of the laptop lifestyle, right? You see a lot of people talking about residual or passive income. I'm the sort of person, and I guess you are as well, Wade, that actually enjoys working. I enjoy being productive. I enjoy being of value to society. I enjoy making an impact. And to be fair, I've had weeks on the beach, and that's beautiful. But after a while, I get a bit of restless legs and I want to do something with my life. So I'm interested to hear your take on the dynamic and why you chose 3 days off and 4 days on, as opposed to maybe the other way around. Because if people are working in a job they hate, or even a job they mildly enjoy, there's this sort of illusion that if I can have all of my life like my holidays, then life would be amazing. Well, no, that becomes, it's like all of summer and there's no winter. You need the counterbalance. That doesn't mean to say your work has to be miserable, but ideally you're doing really meaningful work, so you don't want to take a break. But the holidays are also really amazing, so you don't want to come back. Like, you can have the best of everything. So I want to come back to that concept in just a little bit, but what you mentioned, and I think this is a really valuable conversation. You certainly don't look old enough, Wade, so this is a compliment to you, to have done a university college degree, then taken 15, 20 years as a career, and then got into entrepreneurship, right? So you're clearly doing something right by going to the beach. But talk to me about that transition point, because we work with a lot of clients that are aspirational entrepreneurs. They are wanting to do coaching or healing or some sort of, they want to effectively turn their pain into their purpose, right? So they're out there trying to do that, and maybe they're currently working part-time or full-time, and they're trying to transition into starting their own business. You've done that successfully now and built an incredible brand for yourself. So how did you manage that transition, especially if you're working in a job or a career or for a company that you've been with for more than a decade, or in that industry for more than a decade? There's the idea of golden handcuffs, right? You know that world, you're known as being in that world, you're getting paid well. I imagine at this point as well, maybe you've got a family as well. So how do you make that transition from employee to entrepreneur? What was that process for you?
Sure. And a couple of things. I want to say, just chime in on one thing before I forget. I fundamentally don't believe in passive income. I don't believe there's any such thing as passive income, because at some point you earned it. Now, you might have repeating income, getting repeat paid for it. Great. An artist, a musical artist, records a CD, and because it's good, it gets paid against. But you could almost just say they just got paid over time rather than paid at once.
Yeah.
Any really fundamentally great artist that produces great content in any genre or any type of industry, it took a while for them to figure out how to do it. And they have all the years before when they were working their tail off to learn how to be great. So number one, there's that. So I started looking to get away from work. So I was 4-day work week. I want to work less. And that too is running from something as opposed to moving towards something which isn't as fun. I think the simplest thing that made it work for me was I was coming from an industry that I believe in, and I still work with many of those clients. Mm-hmm. And I had a vision of what I was going to do. It did not work out. It failed miserably. I went through basically 10 years worth of life savings for my business in about 6 months, and great ideas, did coaching, did all the things I'm supposed to do, and it didn't work out. Stuff happens, life happens. But in all of that, from having a father who's an entrepreneur and a mother who's into spirituality, wisdom, psychology, just being open. I said, okay, what can I learn from this? Just
Mm.
different pieces. And ironically, out of all of that came an opportunity. One client just said, hey, could you create this software that would do X for me? It was basically to help compensate their team members abundantly if they sold really well. I said, sure. So off of this one idea, and I fancied myself as a coach. I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to help people with sales coaching and growing their business.
Yep.
I got asked to do this one software thing. I'm a software geek. I'm good at that. I don't particularly love it, but I'm good at it. I like the creative part, not the support part. Long story short, because I was willing to listen on that, that software has paid 80% of my bills for the last 20 years.
Wow.
And so here's the piece for me. Now, this is not everybody's journey. This is my journey. What I'm passionate about or what I have is this vision is not what's paid the bills, but it's given me the freedom to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And so put simply,
Mm.
it's not always going to be, at least in my experience, that what you love to do is everything. So there's this saying, what would you do if you had $100 million or some huge amount of money in the bank? That's your ideal, your ideal living. I'm like, no, that's your ideal lifestyle. That's not your life work.
Mm.
To me, your life work is what you'll do even if you don't get paid. Will you get up to feed the kids? Will you do those things? That's your soul work. So for me, coaching volleyball and basketball for my kids, I don't get paid for it financially, but I can't imagine not doing that.
Yes.
Now, there's a certain way to serve people, in my understanding. This is not meant to be soapbox-ish. When I'm aligned and serving well, my clients pay me really well because guess what? I ask about their needs, I inquire about their needs, I listen, and I help meet their needs.
Mm.
When I'm only focused on me, despite the whole 3-day weekend thing and all that, when I get too much about me, I can't hear them and I'm not as effective. And guess what? They don't pay me as well. So you can call it spirituality, you can call it groundedness. They intersect in the same place in my experience. And so
Agreed.
a lot of this was born out of having a father who is a very grounded entrepreneur in the sense of hard work, get stuff done, but enough of the islands of, well, don't work harder than you have to. So it's been a mix of those, but the best way I'd put it is I happen to believe there's a God. I can't prove it. I'm not selling it, but that's my personal experience. And I can honestly say this sounds self-serving, but I do my best to try to help people. I do my best to try to listen to what is aligns and what's good for people. And I'm a horrible researcher, a horrible market researcher, a horrible copywriter. There's so many things I'm horrible at. And here I am 20 years later, still an entrepreneur despite all the odds. Yeah. So there's something about tuning in, being open enough to serve, and still at the same time moving towards what you're doing. So I still have a side job. My side job is my software business. In my whiny teenage 16-year-old bratty world, I don't want a software business. Come on, Cal, I want everything to be exactly the way I want. I want to be a superstar. I want to be a rock star, not have to practice, show up on Wembley Stadium and play to 50,000 or how many the capacity is, 100,000 and go home. Yeah. But it doesn't work that way. And so I think that's the one thing that traps a lot of people. And so I moved very slowly. I went from working from a company to consulting to the people I just worked with. I read a book once that said, be a paid apprentice, because you can start a business with nothing and try to write a bunch of copy and try to be brilliant like yesterday and put a bunch of pressure on people to buy something really quickly. And you're going to sound like at least a quarter of the marketplace that is not going to make it. Or you can say, hey, I know a couple things. It's probably less expensive for you to pay me as a freelancer or a coach once a week in total. So if I could give you insights that are worth of this position, so I could be a part-time office manager. I could be a part-time, I have a friend who does profit work. So I could be a part-time CFO. So that might be worth $5,000 a year, or you could hire a full-time CFO at $50,000. Okay, all of a sudden, 10 clients at $5,000 or 20 clients. So there's a lot of it is just that and being willing to learn step by step. There really was no magic other than I'm going to get there.
Yeah. I think we talk about this at Wild as having a compelling vision. And then from there going, okay, what does the internal alignment in me need to be to show up, right? So not let the ego get in the way. Don't chuck the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. I think there's something very honorable And I think your perspective on this is quite grounded, clearly from your upbringing and your parents, but also as well, just from the sort of, is it the cloth that you cut from? I think that's the cut from the same cloth. That's the phrase. I think that's something that it gets a little bit lost in translation today, particularly when you see people that have got success and fame on Instagram, and that very much stumbled across that. I think there's, as you mentioned, there's in an ideal, lovely, crazy la world, you get paid a fuckload of money to coach and to play volleyball and beach volleyball, and you look after your kids, and that's great, right? In the practical world, you may also need to run software. And I think there's something beautiful about that, which is that's still honorable work. Like, your parents obviously were a little bit alternative in the sense of dad being an entrepreneur, mum being quite open. That's not a normal combination. But, I think about my parents, or particularly my great-grandparents who, grew up in the UK, came out to Australia in search of a better life, didn't know anybody. They didn't complain about what type of job they had. They just fucking worked. They just said, if this puts food on the table, this is what we're going to do. When granddad qualified, runs his own business, comes to Australia, starts by just driving trucks, because that's all you could do. And there's nobility in that. I think when you're just looking after yourself, right? Well, of course you can be selfish, but when you've got kids and a responsibility and a partner and you got to put food on the table, well, then it doesn't matter how you do that. I often think about this. It's like, you see, imagine that obviously you've got Uber drivers and Uber Eats and all that stuff there as well. For me, I think that's fantastic. If I'd rather do that than sit on the couch doing nothing. So yeah, there's probably better jobs for all intents and purposes, but that doesn't mean to say that's not a great job. So I think we've got to become less romantic about this idea of, I want to just have my best life and dream life. To be fair, to have that opportunity is such a tremendous luxury in the global standards, right? Just unbelievable that you could even talk about a 3-day weekend and have one. Some people don't have a weekend full stop. They work 5 jobs, 7 days a week for their whole lives until they die. So if you have a break at all, that's a miracle. Having 3 days off is even better. But if that means that you've got to write some code, which you're actually really good at, it's gifts and talents that God gave you to be able to manifest into this world, then fucking use them, right? Like that, people get, I think, too romantic about this idea. And we see this a lot where people start a business. And I think what you said there, you glanced over it, but I see this story, which is I have all this savings and then it disappeared when I started my business. Yeah, welcome to the club. Welcome to the entrepreneurship is about you finding a way to succeed without the resources. No, you know what that's like. But part of that is going back and getting a job after that and going, okay, well, now I'm going to need to find a way to make some money while I'm getting this set up. And if you're committed to the end goal, which you clearly are and were, then that doesn't matter. But if you're focusing on, I have to win here to validate everything else, then I think you're always going to really struggle with that. So I love some of those points that you made. I love the idea of being a paid apprentice. For me, my journey was actually moving to another country to become an apprentice in NLP and coaching from a guy called Christopher Howard, an American guy. And I lived and worked with him for 6 months for free to try to learn what I now do. But that 6 months, whilst I wasn't paid financially, obviously I had room and board covered, which was great, but that gave me the skills to then grow a multi-million-dollar company. So that was paying me in ways that I would never be able to buy with an entry ticket to a live event or a training program. Just on that as well, actually, who's been some of your biggest mentors or guides or inspirations, some of the best books that you would recommend on this subject, any courses or trainings that you've attended? Everyone has their own style. I love live events. You've talked a little bit about coaches as well. So who's been some of those people for you?
I love live events. There are certain people, for example, I first started listening to Zig Ziglar, I don't know, 25 years ago in my car.
At the top.
Yeah, I just saw it, the 18 cassette series, and literally just because while I was in my company car. So I'm like, okay, I got the idea from my dad. You get an education while you're driving around. All of a sudden, driving around was not a big deal.
Yeah.
Over the years, gosh, everybody for me, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Stuart Wilde. I love Stuart Wilde. Are you familiar with Stuart Wilde's work? He's from Australia. Brilliant author. He has a book called Silent Power, which is maybe about this big and about 45 pages, and another one called Life Was Never Meant to Be a Struggle. He's an Aussie gentleman. Brilliant. So many people. I love the Tao Te Ching. I was raised Catholic. There's so much I've learned from that. So many people. I love, one of the things I love about Wayne Dyer and Zig are two of the people that I would listen to, that they never gave me homework. And yet by listening to them, stuff would shift. Yeah. So a lot of people, I'm one of them, like I'll say, okay, now do this, now do that. But I'm almost feel like I'm calling it out. They were both so good that they would just talk through stuff and tell stories and be funny. And just in general, so many people that I've grown up that are entrepreneurs, learning from them. The company I've worked for is a company called State Farm in the United States. And a lot of my clients are State Farm agents, and they're a very grounded company. They really do a good job. They look to help people. It's a residual income business model, it's insurance. But at the end of the day, it's a very true model. Lifetime value of the customer is built into what they do, that they already see that. And as far as courses, gosh, I love Brendan Burchard. I love Pat Flynn. There's so many people, Bo Easton. There's a lot of people I've studied and continue to study to learn from because there's so much I don't know.
Mm.
But the thing I would say to a lot of people that maybe doesn't always make it is not everybody's going to make seven figures. I don't make seven figures. I still haven't made seven figures, but here's why. Because I've watched, as I mentioned, money be a multiplier. In my case, our children, my wife and I, they're 15 and 12. I've watched plenty of my father's friends and even some of my clients have their children reach about 16 and 17. And the entrepreneur says, great, I finally made enough money. Let's hang out. And the kids are gone.
Mm.
And the entrepreneur then says, over the next 20 years, as we know, once you start investing money, it explodes later in life. So now they have literally millions. They have an estate tax problem, but they missed that on time with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, number one, that's not acceptable, at least for me, at least not to try to do that.
Yeah.
But also just this idea you mentioned of your great grandparents and the work ethic. If you have a perspective, so you and I are talking, it seems like we're both in a pretty good, financially good situation. 6 out of 7 people on the planet, if the information in the book Factfulness by Hans Rosling is accurate, 6 out of 7 people live on less than $32 a day. So if they can, as I tell my children, if they can do that and still be happy, I'm not saying be guilty, I'm not saying feel bad, I'm not saying any of that. Do what you can. If you can, great. And if you can't, no big deal. But I'm saying if people can be happy on $32 a day,
yeah,
and I'm looking at multiples of that, and I'm saying, but wait, where's the next thing that's going to be making me happy? It's like, well, no, you don't get it. This is an inside job. And so understanding that to me has been something that's so huge. So for me, getting back to, why 3 days versus 4 days,
yeah.
I got to 3 days off, and I find over a 3-day period, I get to forget what I do. And that's my definition of a vacation. If you don't forget what you do for a living, you didn't have a vacation. So over the weekend, most weekends when I do it a little over 85, 90% of the time. When I take it and I stay off my email and do all the things I'm supposed to do, I legitimately, it's not that I'm amnesiac. I just literally don't think about what I do. But to your point, by the time Monday comes around, I want to work. And I still find myself, if we have a 3-day work week in the US, let's say I have my Monday off because it's a holiday, a national holiday, and I still have my Friday off and I get 3 days, I'll find myself working 3/12s. I like about 35 hours a week. That's about 33, 36. That's my number. On a busier week, I just had a live event last week, a virtual summit. I worked 42 hours in a week.
Nice.
Boo-hoo. Or maybe it was 50. I forget.
Yeah.
So I can do it.
Yeah.
But I don't have to do it. And then finally, in my parking lot or my garage, one car is 4 years old, one car is 15 years old. I don't need the latest thing. So I've made choices. So that's the thing. There are still trade-offs. And that's not to say somebody can't also make a lot of money in different things, but the less your expenses are, the more likely you are to have a job that you enjoy. So if you want to be a teacher in the United States, you have to be willing either you have to be married with somebody that's making more money if you want a much higher lifestyle, or you have to roommate or something, or you can just say, oh, well, this is what I really want. And there's trade-offs. So there's no magic in that sense. And I don't hear you suggest anything to that. It's work. It's what level do you want? And I love what you said about the apprentice thing. So many people miss that. For this virtual summit I just did, I apprenticed. I'm 49, and I apprenticed with a company of a friend of mine that runs much bigger virtual events, a company called Podfest. And they had like 5,000 people at one of their events and 6,000 in another. And I got, for one of the events, I worked the behind the scenes. I was a moderator to see everything that was going on as best as I could.
Yeah, right.
So I was also a speaker. I was a moderator and a speaker at the event. So the full range of everything. But because, of course, I got to serve, I got to learn every detail. And so when I put on my event, which is a much smaller scale, I mean, they had like 300 speakers or, something like this huge Tony Robbins event kind of a thing. And virtually, I'm like, I just want to put on an event that it's not going to, take 20 million hours. And I wanted to make something that was scalable that people could follow. So still willing to do the work, but having steps. baby steps, gradual, but not having to have everything right away.
Great stuff. Some fantastic stuff in all of that. I love the reasoning around the 3 days. I know for us, when we take a 3-day weekend here as well, it feels very much the same. We've got, and I imagine there's some great spots where you live as well, but in Perth, we've got very much, you go traditionally 2 places in WA. You either go down south, which is the wine region, right? So equivalent of like a Napa Valley in California, for example, which is very, very beautiful. The equivalent of someone in New York going to the Hamptons, right? It's like 3 hours drive, and you sort of get away from it all, or you go into the hills, which is sort of, you going east, and both of the hills probably 45 minutes, 50 minutes. Down south, which we're going actually next weekend for a long weekend with the family, is a couple more hours, but it's far enough away where you forget where you are. I think that there's something in that as well, where even if you don't have 3 days, but you've only got 1 day, like on the weekend we went to the hills. It was 45 minutes to get out there, which is really nothing. Spent the whole day out in the hills, then came back. I felt like I'd been on a vacation. I felt like I'd gone somewhere else. You come back renewed. And I think there's also something as well around connecting in with nature. Especially if you live in a capital city, if you can get out of that city and get into nature, there's a lot that says that, from a cognitive perspective, when you're in nature, it's actually quite calming as opposed to man-made objects. So there's a lot in that. But I think that idea is brilliant. I was going to ask the question, do you take the 3 days sequentially? But you've obviously already answered that. I think that's great. And it's good to sort of break that up and separate that. Now, here's a question for you. And this is a little bit more of a personal question for me. My wife and I, Ash, we're expecting our first child in September.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Very, very happy. And, it's funny you mentioned about those trade-offs and that exchange. One of our mentors, a guy called Dan, we were talking about our business plans and our goals at the beginning of the year. This is before we realized we were pregnant. Actually, sorry, it was the end of last year before we realized we were pregnant at the start of this year. And I mapped out all my plans. He says, Cal, you're going to have a child next year at some point. And he said, children are dynamite from sort of 0 to 7. And he says, the first 7 years you spend with your kids determine the self-esteem, the self-confidence, the characteristics that, like, children need their fathers in those years. And if you're there, you're going to have great kids. And if you're not there, well, you're going to have kids that have challenges where you can't solve those challenges because you missed that critical time. So his suggestion to us was very much what you've already embraced, which is, if you're going to make a sacrifice for their first 10 years to be more present for them. He says, because this was his rhetoric. He says the whole world is basically designed for people under the age of 30. He says after 30, he says that you don't go out. He says you maybe go out for dinner, but once you've got adult kids, there's nothing for you to do in life except build a fucking great business. So his suggestion was, hey, don't worry about trying to scale this company. Instead, focus on building systems so you don't have to work as much, and instead just be present with your kids. And I thought, fuck, that's a really great point. And he said something to me which I don't think you can fully appreciate until you have kids. So I don't know the experience yet, but I get the feeling like this is going to be true for me, which is, Dan's built, $10+ million companies, big entrepreneur in the UK. He says, despite all the success that I've had in entrepreneurship, he says, there's nothing that compares to the sense of satisfaction and joy I get from my kids. So I go, okay, well, that's, he's quite an impressive business owner. He's achieved a lot in that space from an impact perspective. But if he's saying that about his kids, it says there's some magic in that as well. So I can understand wanting to spend time with them. I'm interested to know from your perspective, if you're designing a game plan for me, let's say at the moment I do 5 days. Ash and I are very flexible in the sense, if we want to take a day, we take a day. It's no problems. We regularly will take breaks and time off. Normally every quarter, I try to go away for a couple of days, if not a week, just to get away and refresh the vision. But I've got friends that'll take a weekend, like they'll take Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But I also have another friend who will take a day in the middle of the week just to be with his little daughter, while his partner, who also works in the business, she works, and then she'll take a Friday and he'll work. And so they effectively have a day off each as well. If you had any experience or exposure to that, would be anything that you'd recommend, particularly while the kids are not in school, if you could have that time now, the way that you design your business?
Sure. So a few things, and this is what I've experienced in the sense that, okay, so first of all, I got to experience what I believe is a blessing of having my mother be able to be a stay-at-home mom because of what my father provided. That's not a judgment on anything else. Not saying it's better. I've certainly met women that they're better off working. Everybody's got their style.
Yeah.
There's something about being able to be present with your kids. And I still worked during that time. And I wasn't even doing a 4-day work week for some of this time, but every day I was present in some way. So I've played Lightning McQueen cars with my son till the cows come home, even though I only end up with Sally with the cone on her head as the car, while he had like 80 cars over here, little booger. But I can honestly say, I can maybe count on my hand the 1 or 2 events that I've missed, but it's not the events. It's the in-between things that happen that aren't scheduled, whether it's something as simple as walking, but so powerful that just being able to be, there's a certain, the whole 3-day weekend thing, whatever you want to call it, whatever, because some people say, wait, I want to work when my kids are in school. Great. So that's 180 days in the US, and it's a different schedule. It's about pace. Do you want to be driven by some insecurity, some need, something outside of you, or do you want to be driving? I want to be driving. The only person I want driving, or the only other being than me I want driving, is, I believe, like I said, not selling it, I believe there's a divine, a God, or whatever, and I believe I'm less intelligent than that being. So I'm open to suggestions, always. But I don't want some insecure, some need, some number on a piece of paper, or even more so, some digital number that changes by the moment to determine my life. And so for me, being present with children in the sense that I'm right there, I'm present with you, there's nothing else going on. My phone is literally in another room, because I'm human. If my phone's there, I'm like, oh, something just came on, and just to enjoy them, to savor them. So it's not you're not taking a hit. You're getting an opportunity. And if you can give yourself the opportunity to fully enjoy that, which so many people don't have the ability to do. But going back to your concept of the 1 to 7, that's why I believe so many families that grow up in lower income areas, but where the mothers are not working, or they grow up in a community, the children are so happy because they're getting the time. Now, also on a side note, get sleep is my suggestion. And the baby sleep schedule, we were one of those couples where a couple of our friends gave us the same book. It's called Healthy Sleep Habits, Happy Child. And it's all about just a sleep schedule that makes sure, bottom line, the kid gets to sleep. And once you understand their signs, like if they start hiccuping, they're actually overtired. So it's people hiccuping, and somebody's like, oh, give them some food, feed them. I'm like, oh my God, no, they're going to feed the child. It's 8 p.m. at night. Give them some Coca-Cola. Like, no, you can't do this. And part of that, to me, is just about natural rhythms. So I forget exactly what you said earlier, but even just, whether I mentioned this concept about passive income, and, there's just certain things I think if we look to nature, we find lessons. For example, I've never seen a turtle with 2 shells. So for me, and again, everybody's got their own thing. Accumulating a bunch of real estate for me is like a 5th ear, or a 3rd ear. Like, I would have a 5th year, like I had 4 years, a 3rd ear. Like, why would I need that? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's extra. So you hear about people, Tim Ferriss talked about in his book, The 4-Hour Work Week. We had a friend who had like properties all over the world. He says, great, I pay for these properties so other people can live with them, where I could be renting. So there's just certain things, and pace in life. There's a natural pace. And one thing Stuart Wilde, the same gentleman I referenced, he talked about in Life Was Never Meant to Be a Struggle. He said, look, if you look at nature, look at a lion. When a lion is ready to hunt, for that while, it exerts effort, but it doesn't struggle. So it works for a very short period of time. It gets its kill, and it relaxes the majority of the day. It doesn't obsess about, am I a good lion? What kind of lion am I? What's my lion like? Am I take a lion selfie? No, I'm just a lion, damn it. And so in that sense, I think there's something to be said for just listening. And from what I can tell, just from me and you already, Cal, I would say trust your instincts, and just know that also, especially in today's economy, the more your time becomes scarce, the more people value it. And this is not meant as a trick, but this is high school dating or teenage dating 101. Yeah. Johnny wants to go out with everybody. He's the best looking guy in the world, but he asks out every girl. None of the girls want to go out with him. And, this other guy is kind of a dork, but he doesn't, part of it's that. But also when I started telling my clients, even my software clients who kind of implicitly expect 5-day-a-week tech support, I said, I'm not open Fridays. And I said, look, during the 4 days, I'm going to be proactive because the nature of my software, it's not an emergency room for a hospital software. It's just payroll type software. So it's going to be okay. There are no emergencies. And on Fridays, I'm not available. Here's what started happening. people would say, hey, Wade, I know your time is really valuable. I know you're really busy, but can we talk? And the same stuff I told them before that I'd been charging for, or at times not charging for, they were willing to charge more for. And it wasn't, again, this wasn't a game. This wasn't some hyped up, I'm going to try to trick you. It was, no, it was valuable. I didn't see it. I wasn't valuing my time. And at the very least, no different than we're having a podcast right now. And you and I are in different parts of the world. And guess who, for the most part, gets to set the time? You, because you're the host. When I'm the podcast host, guess who sets the time windows? I do, because you're doing the majority of the work in this particular situation. I know what it is to produce a podcast. And so a lot of this is, as you get clear about your time, there is a group of people that is probably the top 5% of your clients, or I don't know the whole size of your business, but the ones that are just like you. And when they see that you're taking Friday off, or that you have more time with the kids, or whatever it looks like, you're going to blow their mind with something that's not a trick. It's not a latest tactic from the latest SEO book or the latest internet marketing conversion. It's authentic. It's who you are. It's when, gosh, Nicole Kidman or Tom Cruise back in their heyday, when they walk in a room and everybody's like, wow, they've done the work. When Messi plays soccer, wow, he's done the work. He doesn't have to say, hey, watch me, I'm Messi, I'm going to do something. No, he just does it. Yeah. So I think the more you value your time and put you and your family right there, and even your clients are a little bit below, because any one client can go, and your team members, to me, it's family, team members, and clients. Mm-hmm. And clients are still way up there. So and then there's everybody else who doesn't pay my bills, or doesn't, they can, not that they can go to hell, but that's not who I'm serving. I'm putting out a podcast, you're putting out content, and those who come to me will do that. But yes, I already can tell by the way you handle things, you're in a very strong position. And thank you. I'd say just pick your absolute best opportunities. Like, make it a challenge yourself to say, rather than saying, how can I cut down a lawn with a pair of scissors, and tell everybody how hard I'm working, just cut the friggin' lawn with a lawnmower, or hire somebody to cut the lawn.
Yeah, wise words. I was listening to a colleague in Australia talking about living your best day, and he had this idea of writing it down and getting clear on what your ideal day would look like, and then once every 6 months living it, and then move it to once a quarter, and then move it to once a month, and then ideally move it to once a week. And I like the idea of sort of gradually moving into that place as well, which I think is fantastic. Now, I want to shift gears a little bit here for people with the time that we've got left, because if I'm already in business, traditionally what happens is, and I'm not sure if this was your experience, but it was certainly mine, is you go from working in a job where you are busy the whole time because you're there to extract as much value as possible from the market, right? So people don't get this concept. I think a lot of people don't get this concept that if you're paid 50,000, you're not bringing in 50,000 of value to the company. They're trying to extract 250 to 500,000 in value from you, right? So you got to work 10 times as hard as whatever they pay you. And that's just the inherent nature of business. Then you go and run your own business. And to be fair, most people would struggle to work one day when they start in their own business, right? So you might do 7 days where you're working, but you realistically are working less than a day in total time. And then you obviously end up getting bogged down doing a whole heap of stuff. And, we talk about businesses having 5 elements, right? Marketing, sales, operations, leadership, and finance and legals. So you do a bit of everything. And then naturally, you've got to come to a point where you go, okay, what's my genius zone? What am I really good at? What can I delegate and outsource and automate and systemize and all that sort of stuff? And we have a protocol around that. But I'm interested to know from your perspective, if I'm in business right now, let's say I'm working 5 days, I'm working 6 days, maybe even 7 days, and I'm wanting to cut back on that and have a little bit more harmony, a little bit more balance, and I'm looking to move to a 3-day weekend. Well, then what does that process look like if I'm getting started in that journey? Where would you encourage me to start? I know there's people right now that if I send this clip to them, they're going to go, Calvin, there's just simply no way that I'm ever going to have a 3-day weekend because I've got so much to do. You don't get it. It's not that easy. My business is different. It's all a load of bullshit, right? But they're in that mindset. So where would you encourage them to start? What's the process for that?
So first thing is, and I love that idea, by the way, of gradually going from once every 6, because what you want to do is you want to get to an ideal default week that just is a habit. Because if your default week is awesome, and if every day you're pretty much happy, you're going to have a happy life. That's how you have a happy life, is you have a happy life an hour at a time, a day at a time. You have to have, and you mentioned the beginning, you have to have an inspiring vision. So most entrepreneurs, the problem they make is they don't have something awesome to do. And I'll use Friday as the anchor day. Let's say they're taking either Sunday off or Saturday and Sunday off, but say, okay, what are you going to do on Friday? I don't know. well, here's what's going to happen. You're going to show up Friday and you didn't make any plans. Most everybody else is working other than your entrepreneur friends. And unless you have a group of people like, hey, we're going to do something on Fridays, there's nothing inspiring to do. Whereas if you say, in my case, I'm going to go play beach volleyball. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I go to the beach on Fridays, about a third of us are entrepreneurs or self-employed. Or maybe let's say 40%, I'm anal with numbers. So 40% of us are self-employed or something like that. About 40% of us are either bartenders or working in restaurants or whatnot. And 20% are maybe semi to unemployed. And guess what? We're all there on Fridays playing volleyball because it's that important. So first it has to be that important. From there, it becomes now, and I mean, literally, whether it's spending time with your family, if your kids are of school age and you have a spouse or a partner during that Friday, perhaps that's the one day you might get a free babysitter. Your kids are both in school. Go with the beach. Go to do whatever it is you get to do where you get free time.
Yeah.
So you got to have an inspiring reason why. Otherwise, you won't do it. Yes. But think about this for a second from a mindset standpoint. At some point, and I'm going to talk in dollars, let's say. At some point, I'll speak for me. At some point, I made $3 an hour. And then I made $10 an hour. Then I made $20 an hour. So at some point, all of us said, $3 an hour is not going to cut it. I have to earn more. Yeah. But at no point did we say 2 days of vacation is not enough. I need more. Mm-hmm. We never negotiate. We literally didn't put that as part of the contract. So if I can make more money over time, why can't I earn more? And then as far as the mechanics, if you're an entrepreneur, it can be as simple as, let's say I'm working, whatever it is, mathematically, say over the next 12 months, I'm going to take off 1 to 2 hours per work week each month. And I'm going to become better. But what has to happen is this idea of this whole, well, I'm working so damn hard. Well, maybe you're stupid. Maybe you're not that good at what you do. Why are we glorifying that I don't know how to do my job? I'm slow. Nowhere else do we say, but we say, oh, I'm slow. If you're in football or soccer, as we call it in the US, you're slow. That's not an asset. Get quicker, get better, evolve, damn it. And so from that perspective, I'd say to a person, stop glorifying that, because that has got to be one of the most stupid, like male toxic entrepreneur sponsored beliefs that there is on the planet. That's just wrong. Like, oh, wait, so let me get this straight. So you're dumber than I am and you earn income less quickly than I am. And I'm supposed to want to follow your blog or your thing because of that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's all measured on numbers, but don't put that as, hey, this is my asset. No, you're learning, you're in process, and you'll get better. So it can be mechanical. It can be so boring. I mean, you know this too, Hal. I can charge you $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000 as a coaching client to talk you through that over a year. I can just tell you, guess what? Work a couple hours less each week, and in 12 months you'll be there. You tell me how you want to do it. And that's not said to be smug. Some people do need somebody to say, wait, you just insulted all your coaching clients. No, some of them can't figure out how to. They're a genius in one area and they're not a genius in the operation. So they say, wait, I got plenty of sales income money that's coming in. I'm horrible at operations. That's great understanding of how and when to use a coach. But some of them just literally can't think of something better, and this is the tougher part, and this deals into part of what you'd asked me about of, body, heart, mind, spirit. Some people have a unsatisfying or worse personal life or painful personal life that they don't want more time in. And this is where it gets a little tough, because it's like, okay, my relationship with my spouse or my kids is really strained. So I don't really want a 3-day weekend. It's going to make me confront some stuff. Now, you know what's more painful than that? Waiting 20 years. Yeah. And then getting old and dying and never confronting that. So some of it's that. And some people just, if you want to really, again, take away the edge of the bravado of it, well, maybe you just lack creativity. I mean, can you not think of something better? Is there not enough going on the planet that you can think about that's more exciting than sitting in front of a laptop 7 days a week? In my experience, there is. So yeah, I think a lot of it's just like anything else, choosing and then deciding you're going to get there. In my case, it took me 22 years. If it took me 24, I wouldn't have stopped at 22 and said, screw it, I'm not going to do this. It's worth it.
Yeah. Wow. So much good stuff in that. I think you hit the nail on the head with, if you don't have a compelling reason to take the time off, you won't. Because for most of us, the work and the mission, whatever it is that you're doing, is fulfilling your needs at such a high level because it's your baby, you're in control, there's so much going on in that. And if you're passionate about it, it becomes really addictive. So you've got to have something that you're equally passionate about, even more passionate about, as a distraction. And, the litmus test for everybody is this. If you, when you go away on a holiday, And if you take holidays, but let's say you do, if you go away on a holiday and you leave on the Friday, I promise you still get your whole week done Monday to Thursday. You just condense the time, and you don't do all the stupid shit you were going to do anyway. You're better at getting clear on the critical priorities, and you get those done. The other fluffy stuff you probably don't get done, but that was never important to get done anyway. So if you can do that when you go on a holiday, just do that as if you're going on a holiday, and then the whole life can be like that. So, and then people go, I'm stressed all the time. No, you're not stressed on holiday. You're just stressed at work because it's a pattern. You keep buying into that pattern. So I think it's quite powerful. You've got a couple of groups that people can connect in with you more for some more tactical stuff on this as well regarding the 3-day weekend club. You want to just explain quickly that as well, and then we'll put the links up for that in the show notes?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have a club, 3-day weekend club. You go to 3dayweekendclub.com. And basically we have part of the club is free, and we help people focus on making the most of your relationships, your time, your money, your things, what you already have. Whether you ever change jobs, you don't have to change jobs for this. You don't even have to have a job for this. Making the most of what's already in front of you, and doing that. So learning to value your time, because again, if you don't value the money you have now and you get a lot more money, you'll be like the lottery winners and you'll just blow your money. If you don't value your time and you get a lot more time, you're not going to do that. And then the second part of it is, as you experience a lot of the different content there, connect with people who are on this same path, then there's also part of it goes into how you create that 4-day work week, whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee. And there's slightly different strategies, and we can help in there as well.
Outstanding. And if I'm checking you out on socials outside of that group, or obviously we'll put the link up into the show notes, but how can we find out a bit more about you, Wade?
Pretty much everything is at 3-day weekend club. So whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, I think that's, pretty much everything. It's going to be on there, or LinkedIn. It'll be on there as well. And again, just simple stuff, or you could just email me, wade@3dayweekendclub.com. More than happy to help. I'm a real person. More than happy to help with whatever I can.
Look, I appreciate your time so much. I appreciate you staying up late for us over in the US. And I just want to thank you for your conversation today. You know, you're exactly what we were looking for in terms of podcast guests. I've really thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I've got, 4, 5, 6 pages worth of notes on my iPad. So I've learned heaps. I'm sure everyone else has as well. I would encourage you guys to jump over to the 3-day weekend club and check out what Wade's doing. I'm going to do the same as well. And next time you've got a virtual summit on as well, let us know, because we'll share it to some of our clients over here in Australia as well. Lord knows everyone in Australia would love to have a 3-day weekend. So I think the idea will go down well here as well. You could have a whole new market over here. Mate, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Good luck and God bless. And I want to say thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Congratulations on the baby that's coming. Good luck with all that. And let me know whatever I can do to help.
Pleasure. And for everyone paying attention and watching, if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a comment, a review, or a like wherever you're watching it around the world. And until we see you live or online, be bold, have fun, go make an impact, and we'll see you on the wild side. Good evening and good night.